Hello everybody, this is Masood Ahmed, your host at Allah's Narrative. Welcome to today's talk. The battlefield on earth is one with two T's. The first, the talent. The second, the tools. Talent comprises of knowledge and skill. The tools comprise of handling and experience. The greater the power the two T's possess, the clearer the victory comes by. Let us find out what and how these assets define the debate between theists and atheists. The first analogy that I would like to talk about is of intelligence, is of knowledge and skill. In a chess match, the players will be tempted to make drawish moves if they lack the knowledge of the lines and the technique of making moves. But if the matchup is against a high ELO player, because he is aware of the knowledge, the lines, and the technique, he has mastered the technique, he wouldn't play drawish moves. So as such, the battle will not go on forever. It is not going to be an endless battle because of the first T, knowledge and skill. A player who's equipped with these armaments, with these assets, is sure going to deliver a decisive blow and win the match. As such, in the debate between theists and atheists, in my own personal experience, I have seen atheists, after a brief engagement or even a prolonged engagement, call it a day, stating that these are endless debates in which they cannot participate. But nonetheless, they never quit advocating godlessness or condemning religion for its existence. But when you invite them to a debate, they often cite excuses such as, oh, these are endless debates, we don't have time for it, or these debates are getting boring. What in fact is happening is the two T's. They lack the knowledge, the skill, and they lack utilizing those tools, and they lack the experience. Hence, they can never, or they are failing to deliver a decisive blow. So the analogy of a chess match perfectly fits with the ongoing debates between atheists and theists. I don't see any reason why the atheists should dismiss dialogue with the theists. If they are equipped with knowledge, skills, and they have the experience of handling evidence, then they should use those assets, those tools at their disposal to communicate, to transfer their knowledge with which they are convinced that God does not exist, and persuade with these assets, persuade the theists who are actually challenging them to deliver a decisive blow. So this is analogy number one. Anybody who flees this challenge is at the least infirm, unfair, and at best immoral and bereft of ethics of engagement and a civil discourse. So this is analogy number 1. Let's look at what is analogy number 2. In this analogy, I will help you understand why is it important to deal with the Quran rather than dealing with the Bible or the Vedas or the Book of Jubilees or the Book of Enoch or other mythologies of the ancient world. The premise that atheists do not understand is God has been sending messengers, prophets, to all the nations since Adam. And after Noah, as humanity became divided into several nations and they spread globally, God sent prophets to each of those nations who got themselves arranged into an organized society, and most importantly, those of whom who drifted from the natural disposition of life sciences. For example, those societies who invented idol worship, or who invented fraud, or who deviated from natural disposition, God immediately sent a prophet or a messenger, calling them back to guidance, calling them back to the instincts, calling them back to the natural disposition of life. If the atheists do not understand this premise, which rightly so, in my opinion and understanding, in my experience that I get to see, they are not buying into this premise because of whatever assumptions or motives they carry with them. Okay? And because they overlook this premise, they are finding it difficult to connect the pieces of the puzzle, and they are startled about the story of Noah, the flood, the deluge, being written in the literary works of ancient world, the ancient Mesopotamia, or in the Book of Enoch, or in surrounding cultures of that time. Essentially, Noah and his companions who believed in God after they deboarded from the ark basically became all of the different communities and nations on earth. Essentially, they carried this element of this memory which they lived through. And obviously, as I explained in my other videos, there were limitations as to how far the story propagated on earth because of the obvious challenges that people faced when they moved on to further away lands. Coming back to the point, because atheists do not understand this premise, they find it mind-boggling that this story of Noah, the story of deluge, is found in all of these ancient cultures and traditions. As such, what they immediately infer, which is a premature decision, that the Bible has indeed copied these stories, and so has the Quran from these ancient mythologies, which is absolutely not the case, even though the Bible does have elements of mimesis. But conversely, the fact that you cannot evade is the Quran, which does not have those elements of mimesis, right? The reason why I'm bringing up the Quran as the text that you guys need to tackle in order to debunk religion and the God of Abraham is for the reason that it is the up-to-date version of God's communication. God has previously communicated to all societies, as I said, who deviated from the natural disposition. So as such, they preserve those elements of stories, the original stories. that does not really mean that the later texts, which became the scriptures, are necessarily borrowed from those original texts and garnished further in different forms. It doesn't really mean that. It only means that later texts confirmed the truth, the radical truth of what had occurred, and which the mention of which is also found in the ancient texts. That's all it means. So as such, if you are out there to debunk, you're better off tackling the Quran, which still retains its pristine form without having been subject to fabrications or foul play by the scribes. Now, since Jeremiah the prophet accuses the scribes of Israel to have made foul game or fabricated stories into it or written lies in the name of God, it became incumbent on God to reach out to humanity once again with the promise that he will guard the scripture for the times to come himself and protect that from corruption, as we have seen the Bible to have undergone at the hands of the scribes. So therefore, the analogy here is to tackle the most up-to-date version if you are setting out to attack and debunk religion, and particularly the God of Abraham. The analogy, which is outstanding if you don't do this, is that you are striking at an arm to deliver a decisive blow to kill a man, which is obviously not going to result in the outcome that you're expecting. But if you strike at the head of a man to give him a detrimental blow, that would most likely result in killing that person. So if you are setting out to kill the God of Abraham, you're better off. You should know to do better, to tackle the Quran and stop making lame excuses. So what is analogy 3? The analogy 3 is, however formidable the Cape buffalo in the African savanna is, the aimed canines still deliver a killing blow. So all the hard work that you do to debunk the God of Abraham and the legacy of prophets within the dynasty of Abraham is fruitless if you do not tackle the Quran, which is the latest scripture with the promise from God himself that he will protect it, he will guard it from corruption of the scale that we have seen the Bible to have been subject to. So here are these 3-point analogies, 3 analogies that are built on the facets of 2 T's: talent and tools. Talent comprises of knowledge and skills. The tools comprise of handling and experience. With these assets, armed with these assets, those who believe in the Quran, such as me, are at ease to defend and to debunk the other side, the atheist argument, and to give them a decisive blow, to put their arguments and to obliterate them permanently. But if the atheist side thinks that they have better power of these assets, then they ought to show us that power to give a decisive blow. I hope you've gotten these three analogies. Strike these three analogies at those who argue in a futile way, so that they get the decisive blow and they retire for good. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye.